Hey, it's me Max, aka Rosentwig, and I hope you're doing well. Today I'm finally starting my art composing series where I pick a piece of art I enjoy and compose a soundtrack for it. Sometimes when working for media, especially games, something like this can actually happen to you. For example, when I worked on Axis Mundi, the developer Philip only had a mood board to show at the time because he was still very early in the development process. So I really had to focus on just nailing the vibe and creating an atmosphere. Either way, I think this is a lovely opportunity for me to practice my composing chops some more. Also, maybe to create some music I normally wouldn't have really made or kind of shied away from, I guess. So yeah, I think this is going to be very interesting. The illustration I chose for this video is by Yukong Tang. I found this wonderful piece on ArtStation and was instantly drawn to it, so please check out Yukong's art via the links below. When doing my initial musical sketches, I like to start with a few keywords for me to focus on. This can either be a feeling, something important in the story that needs to be conveyed, or really anything. The keywords I came up with while looking at the picture are water and wind ambience, open, hopeful, explorative, and peaceful. I also wrote down lighthouse, lab horns. Since Spitfire recently released a Foghorn library for free via their lab collections, I always wanted to use it for something, and I thought, okay, maybe this would be the right time. The first thing I did was create a wind sound in Massive. Normally this would not be part of the soundtrack, but be part of the sound designer's job, but I really wanted to include some ambiences here. Depending on the project you're working on, recording real-life wind is probably a good idea if you're going for realism, but with this I wanted to have an excuse to show you how to make a simple wind sound. Okay, so here we are in Massive. This can be done in any other synth really. It just needs to have a filter, a noise generator of course, some LFOs and maybe some built-in effects, but pretty much all synthesizers nowadays have that. Starting out, I added a noise generator with some white noise, which is being modulated by a slow-moving LFO. The modulation is set to the color and amp part. Color is basically just a sort of filtering, so if I put this down, you can hear it's being filtered in a way. The LFO is pretty important because this will allow just some natural variances in the sound. Then I'm sending all of that into a low pass, which just makes it a lot more softer and gives it a much more windy quality, which is more like a kind of nice sea wind, I guess. Also pretty important to play around with the resonance setting because that really allows for a different kind of wind sound. Because if I turn this up, this becomes like a really strong kind of wind. All of this is also being subtly modulated by some LFOs and some random functioning. Then I'm also modulating a bit of the pan, but it's really just very subtle. And I'm sending that into some effects, just a little bit of distortion and some reverb, which in the end creates this sound. Additionally, I added a recording of some waves very faintly in the background to add some more variety to the ambience. As for instruments, I'm going for the trusty Dulcimer. I just absolutely love this instrument and it's especially perfect for that sea or space vibe. Spitfire Labs actually has a wonderful free Dulcimer. For this, I'm using the Dulcimer from Labs and one from Cinesamples. Dulcimers are usually played in a very free-flowing way, so I chose to focus more on playing around in the scale rather than playing specific chords. One of the best ways to create a more sparse and atmospheric melody line is to obviously leave space in the notes you're playing. You can add some reverb or delay to fill out the gaps in between, but it's also nice to just leave room for something else or just for the track to breathe. Next up is the Labs Foghorn I mentioned earlier. If this would be a picture of like a more rainy and stormy setting, I probably would have featured this in a more prominent way. For this, I chose to use it more as a subtle element, being used kind of as an anchor of sorts, also bringing in that little brooding, dangerous kind of feel that for me perfectly represents the nature of the sea. I also wanted to have another more conspicuous harmonic element in there. I took the lovely Winter Voices by Piano Book and played 2 instances, one of which I panned to the right and one to the left to create a wide image. Now it's time to also introduce a little counter-melodic element. I initially planned on using like a piano really high up, but that didn't really fit the whole vibe I was going for. I ended up using a Celeste instead. Then I created an intro which slowly establishes the vibe and introduces a shimmery and reverb version of the Dulcimers playing some chords, which leads us into the main Dulcimer part. Some additional mixing and effecting, and this is the end product.